Welcome to the All About Us podcast. Today's episode, we will explore the inspiring journey of Diaspora Africans making a significant impact. I'm thrilled to have Henry Lukenge with us today, a remarkable entrepreneur who has redefined what it means to give back to the continent. Henry, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me, Mr. Allen.
Let's start with your unique background. You've lived in Uganda, South Africa, the United Kingdom, and Canada. Where did you originally start your journey? Where were you born?
I was born in Uganda in the mid-70s, during the time of a gentleman called Amin. Any of you have heard of him?
We heard Idi Amin, yes.
Yeah. He was made famous by Forest Whitaker in that movie, Last King of Scotland. If you go see that movie, it's a dramatization of his sort of impact on both the world and in particular my life as a kid born exactly during his time. So as many of my generation would say, our story is written forward. But
I remember one of his sayings. They used to always play on TV. I'm Big Papa. Everybody loves Big Papa. Idi Amin.
Yeah.
And okay. So how long were you in Uganda?
About 2 years. Then because my parents ran one of Uganda's first indigenous construction companies, and during those days, many of their customers were mainly Asians or white.
Okay.
So when as everyone remembers, Idi Amin famously kicked out all Ugandans of South Asian descent.
Okay.
So then what happened was that when they were kicked out, it was assumed that their collaborators, the people like my dad, who were doing business with them.
Okay.
So because of that, my dad went to work one day, didn't come back home. And then I was about 1 or 2. So I didn't see him again until about 4 when we met him in South Africa. Because obviously when they tried to find him, they couldn't find him. They tried to find us. So we ended up being displaced across a few countries. We ended up in South Africa for between 4 and about when I was 10.
Okay, let's digress here. So, because of the business that your father was conducting, which was legal, was it the Ugandan government looking for him?
Yeah, the business was legal. It's just that at the time, if you do like a post podcast, I can send you a few links of it. Basically, what happened was that there was a drive those days to Africanize African economies.
Right.
Right. So after the British left, they left most of the economy in the hands of Asians. So when Idi Amin became president, he said, "Look, you know the way Mugabe done Zimbabwe recently? That's the same thing Amin did." So he said, Uganda for Ugandans. And he said, any Asian business or white-owned business has to have African representation in it.
Right.
And he said, if it doesn't happen, he's going to take up that business and give it to the Africans. So he went through with that.
Right.
So then, so all Asians and a few British who had economic interest in Uganda, were all kicked out.
Okay.
So when they were kicked out, their associates also
Okay.
faced the same. They faced the same persecution, so they had to run off. One of them was my dad.
Okay. I see. I
Yeah.
see. So from Uganda, where did your family travel to?
We basically those days we couldn't have any tickets. So we moved. I found this out when I was older that we went by bus and mini cab and everything else until we showed up in Joburg. Then eventually settled in East London in a place called King Williamstown. We were there for a bit for when I was about 4 or 5 when I turned 11.
Okay.
And then we moved to Kenya for some time because basically at that time what happened, why we had to leave then again was that education in South Africa at that time had been turned into the one you guys had where the quality of education you attended was contingent on your race. So basically, if you're black, you're not going to be a lawyer, doctor, accountant, none of it.
Right.
So my parents had stomach apartheid for a long time. That's one state they couldn't stomach. So what's he called? So they choose to move again. Then moved into Kenya for a bit. And then while in Kenya, my mother got Riyadh code as a nurse. But she was a medical nurse for a long time. She wasn't practicing. But in Kenya, she recertified. And then, as fate would have it, she got a job on the UK healthcare service. That time, they try and find African nurses to go work in England. They gave her a job. She moved all of us. That's how I showed up in England as the 13-year-old.
Okay.
And then life takes on its trajectory after that. I went to go to UK universities. I went on to become a chartered accountant. Went on to become a junior partner at a large accounting firm and get into investment banking, and then everything else eventually turns into the guy who sets up a business and does the foundation, and that's a summary of the story. It's longer than the way I put. There's so many pieces to it that
I'm quite sure it's a detailed story. So at what point did you relocate to Canada then?
2004, end of 2004. Basically, between like 99 2000, when I got my first gig in the accounting profession. I'd been outstanding, but also always the first guy in my line who looks like me to be the room I was in. Then it got to the point where my career plateaued a little bit, where I wasn't going anywhere but laterally all the time.
Okay.
Then I said, okay, I'm going to rethink this and say, if a role shows up that makes me go up, I won't care where it is. I'm going to go after the role instead. So then I interviewed for roles in Canada, in Australia, and the US. Then I actually got hired to work in the US. I got hired to work in, I had one of 3 roles to choose from, the Canadian one, the American one, I think in Seattle, I believe, and one other role that was going to be in Sydney. But then I settled on Canada for one reason only, because it's not the US and it's not as far as Australia. And I didn't know anyone there. I really didn't know anyone in Canada, Ontario when I moved. I just picked up my bags, went for the opportunity. That's it.
Yeah. Well, Canada seems like it's far more advanced in dealing with immigrants, and I think they have better, well-established foreign communities in Canada than they do here in the United States. So I think from what I've heard, there's a lot more support for immigrants. It has been for a while going to Canada than it is in the United States. So how has these experiences, you moving from country to country to country, shaped your perspective of dealing with, diaspora, and what our roles and responsibility is to Mother Africa?
Interesting question, because I consider myself a Pan-Africanist, but also European. And I think it does. If you look at my body of work, it permeates. Basically, my view of overall diaspora people, especially of African descent and everyone else, is reflected in the things I do. I think, first of all, to go back to your question on how has my evolution as a human being through the
Right.
place I've lived in helped me shape, think about our role, right? One is that we're all Africans. You can dice us whichever you want. We need to understand the first thing that as Black people, we, for the most part, are the same people. What's
We
changing
are.
is what changes is what you say colonialists have done,
Exactly.
right? And if we can get around that side of things, everything else becomes easy because at the end of the day, I believe actually so strongly that we are not violent as people paint us to be. This is number
No.
one. Number two, I think we have equal potential and ability to aim for the sky as anyone else. We just
Right.
not opportunity to do so, right?
Okay.
And I say this both with humility, but also being forceful about it because we've had to go through many things and they sit at the table. Like you guys done slavery, we done colonialism. People
Right.
have taken everything from us for free. We have to pay for it in cash that they took for free.
Right.
Right? So when we come to this table to debate, like what's it called, inclusion and all that stuff, we're not trying to beg for it. We shouldn't be.
Correct.
Right? We should be saying, look, the table has been uneven in your favor for a long time because you took some advantage you shouldn't have. Right? Now, you want to work with us through an inclusion program. We have to write it and define it. Don't define it for us.
Correct.
Right? That's the Canadian and that's the Canadian or the Canadian American Black person speaking. That's that person.
Right. Right.
Now, on the other hand, for the African in me, right? We've got for the Africans, at least when I'm on the continent, what I say to them is that look, what we guys in the diaspora can do for you is show you what has happened in other areas, so you don't have to rewrite the whole book. We can work together to show you what has happened in other places, so you can basically skip a few grades in the growth curve to go where everyone else is. Like you don't have to go and build telephone poles. None of that. We've done internet. We've done mobile phones, right? So we people in diaspora can bring these skills that we've got from somewhere else and bring them to beyond Mother Africa, right? Like show or demonstrate to the people on the continent how well managed oil machines work, right? Controls, right? Economic controls, political controls, right? The discipline that creates success. What does it look? These are the sort of things that we people in diaspora can bring to the continent, right? Because we've got lived experience of how systems which have been built up to control and make countries grow. The facets of those systems, we can bring them back to the continent, so we can help the continent overcome its systemic barriers that prevent from achieving its potential. Right, like very basic things like what's it called, controls within the political system and the accounting system,
infrastructure,
infrastructure skills within infrastructure development. Right, now, and then things like economic accountability. These are very simple concepts, but the continent hasn't yet digested them properly to understand that if you get them wrong, everything else falls apart because you get its basics wrong.
Now let me, from my observation, because I have an ex-wife that's Nigerian. I have a son that's half Nigerian. My other son, his mother was from Republic of the Congo. My outside perspective is that in some African nations, they will take part of a technology, but they will try to incorporate it into their old cultural standings and understanding. And it's like putting new wine in an old wineskin. It doesn't quite work. What I mean by that is they get technology, but they don't properly fully implement it. Give you an example. Say you build roads. Okay, you build the roads, you make the roads, you grate them, but you don't put tar and blacktop down on the road. Yeah. And so when it rains, it gets muddy, gets washed away, and everything else like that, because you haven't fully embraced and implemented the totality of the technology. you've created a road, you've leveled it and you paved it, but you didn't put any tar and blacktop down to seal the road.
Yes, but I think you said it well, but you left out something that I talked about before.
Okay.
That economic accountability,
Mhm.
right? Because the people building these roads are engineers trained in the best schools around the world.
Right.
So they're not what's it called? People off the street, the people that are not competent to do this.
They know how
Right.
to do it.
They don't have to do it that way. They can do it the right way. The challenge is that because there's no economic accountability to stuff like this, and where I'm going with this is this, that before someone has the contract to build the road,
Mhm.
right? The system that pays for this has a built-in what's it called? You could say premium for you to win the contract and get paid.
Right.
And that premium is not factored into the quality of the road.
Right.
So
So
now,
they take the lowest bid. Basically, they take the lowest bid.
And not even the lowest bid. They some people, to put it politely, like this is we run with each other. There is political corruption that takes up a fair chunk of African money.
Okay.
So a road that should cost 5 million costs 15. But of those 15, about say 13 is within the different people who are making this 3 million road come to them. So by the time the guy gets a road to build it, right? There's no margin left for him to build a road the way it has to be built. But he has to build it.
He has to build it.
Then they're going to do whatever they have to do with what's left to make a road. Something like a road function for a few days, because that's how much that's how much that's how much money is left.
Right.
For them to make a margin and still put something like a road on site. That's what I mean.
Right. Okay. I understand.
That's the economic accountability and the checks and balances, right?
Okay.
That we need to bring into the system for people to embrace, right? Because I said this many times. When if you're president or prime minister and your daughter is going to hospital and there's no ambulance, you're going to face the symptom that I face every day when I'm trying to go to work and the road is bad.
Right.
Right? Because the same bad road has to take your kids before they can go to an airport to go to Europe. That one bad road first.
Correct.
And they need an ambulance that we budget, but we didn't buy. Right? But the money is gone, but the new ambulance. So we've got to get people like here to understand that like abuse of power, the economic mismanagement that happens. Yes, the poor people pay for it disproportionately, but so do the rich and the powerful. Because when you have a heart attack, you're not getting to London before you get stabilized, right? Because they take every sick person to London for treatment into the States. And I'm like, look, hold on. You've got the best doctors, Nigerians, treating your heart patients in the States.
Correct.
Why can't we get these best heart doctors to treat the people right here in Nigeria, Uganda? Why can't we do that? It's very simple. You didn't build the hospitals, or you didn't pay them properly. That's why everyone said, look, you know what? I love Africa, but I'm not going to die here on 1/3 the money that the minister lives on for 2 days. I won't be doing.
Correct.
Right? So these are things that we have to, as diaspora people, have to get the people back home to understand that the duty of care we owe to each other. This is number one, but also two, that the consequences of going the other way don't pay in one way; they pay in both ways, right? And maybe because many times before they get sick, they're airlifted, they don't see it. But at some point, you're going to be a victim of a bad hospital, a bad road, or no ambulance. At some point,
correct,
right? So don't let this happen when you could do something about it that you didn't. That's really what I try to tell them.
Okay. Well, once again, I'm glad you clarified that now. So it's not a knowledge or implementation gap. It's the financial part of it. It's the accountability, the economic accountability,
the checks and balances. Correct. The idea that capitalism has to function on the rules of rule, like within the construct of a rule of law, right? Like if the road is say 5 million, and you give the guy 5 million, and you don't ask for 1 million back in kickbacks,
right?
You can then turn around and say, look, here's the government inspector who's checking every section of the road, make sure you're doing it properly, right? But if you took 1 million on the top, you're not sending the inspector to check the road, are you? No, because you know there's no money in the box to make the road right.
Correct.
Right? But if you put the same thing together with, like, if the same road is being built like in Canada or China or somewhere, they're going to say the road is 10 million. Here's the cost. We have the government inspector, the government surveyor, the government everyone to check every section of it to be done properly. Right? These are the checks and balances within the system that make it function. Right? So if the guy who won the contract is given the right amount of money for the contract, and then no one takes the kickback, then he can be held accountable for every second of the road. I mean, people in Tanzania have done it. People in Botswana do it. The African country where this actually works, and the others where it doesn't. So it's not a function of what's it called, competence or culture. No, it's a function of application and discipline.
Okay, that's good to know. Your professional journey is unique, from investment banking to funding health and social care staffing firms. What inspired this significant career change? I mean, you started off in banking and then you pivoted to, health and social care. How did that happen?
Actually, I think the best answer, I would say, I'll give you like basically the thing. I'll give you like two, what's it called? Two. I would say I would say that it is one, the evolution of the human being as a person as I've grown. And the second is opportunity. One, I've been through banking my whole life. In 2008, I was working with a trust fund, right? That was working on a few days. Then 2008 happened, and the whole economy collapsed, right?
Correct.
And then at that time, just like COVID, there were stimulus checks being given out everywhere. If anyone who is alive long enough to go back to 2008, they would know that banks and insurance companies and builders, they would pay the chunk of money for causing the crisis. Now, within my portfolio of roles was actually parceling out that money to people, to pre-qualified corporations and people. So while doing that, I realized that just about everyone who got that money, they didn't look like me, but I had to give it up. Right? And when I go back, I used to own a home in Orlando those days, right? Kissimmee. The people got literally, neighborhoods got wiped out. Right? So then I'm in this role in the trust fund that had what we paid a fair chunk of money and basically trying to be the smartest guy in the room. And you realize that even with all your competencies and your skills, even with everything that you know, the system is set up that there are things you can't do even if you want to do them. And one of those is economic justice. Right? Because they're going to say, look, for you to qualify for the government bailout on your mortgage, you need to give us your last two pay stubs, your last this, that to prove that you're the mortgage that you qualified for properly and that now you're struggling to pay. Now you're going to find that most of our people, right, they get self-start mortgages at 10% interest. When you ask them to give you a pay stub or this stuff, they can't find it. So now all these modification programs, no one, if you could qualify. So I'm like, okay, you good people who actually played this game, who are now being rescued, and the victims can't even get most of the money that they should be given to them. And there's nothing you can know about it. Right? So out of 2008, I'm like, you know what? It's been a question of what's it called? I also say it when I was in the accounting firm. When people are looking for investment destinations for capital, right? For Africa, they look at mining companies and then they close the book. Right? Anything else, roads, this, that, they need the IMF and the World Bank coming. But like in the States, like a municipality can build a road using bank money. Like in Africa, you can't do that.
Correct.
Because most of the municipalities or cities don't even have no credit rating naming, right? So all roads, all infrastructure has to be funded using IMF or World Bank loan, no private capital.
Mm-hmm.
And the only private capital coming in Africa is for mines, maybe energy, but mainly mining. Anything else than mining, no one is interested. So it is something that for me was always like an undertone of all as my career went up. And I said, someday, one day when the chance presents itself, I hope to have a business someday so I can do something about things I don't like to fish.
Okay.
So that happened in 2008. There was a combination of two things. One, obviously I was part of the bailout. Two, there were few careers for people at my level that were available. Because if you go back, Anderson collapsed, many accounting firms were shedding off people, many actually downsized. No one thought they would come. So roles like mine were literally, you could walk around the block and only if they whole yet find one. Right? So I had a good role, but I wasn't professionally satisfied with it. Right? So so I chose to basically get out of the investment funding business and travel the world a little. So I took a car ride from Nairobi to Cape Town. Then I went we drove across India and just literally just trying to talk to people on the ground to just rethink what I wanted to do with myself. Right. So then so I came back to Canada, applied for my green card, got it, and then I owned a few houses, sold all of them. I put the money in the bank. Then I went back to England and spoke to one guy who used to employ my mom, like 25 years earlier. What the business exactly like the one that I run now. So he sat me down, walked me through the ropes of what it takes to build a business like mine, what the risks are, and where the opportunity is. Then he told me to go write a business plan and he told me to think, if you have the patience of Job and the persistence of Dang, you'll be successful. And I think you've got both. So I came back to Canada, put together the business plan and got started in April 2009. But I said at the time that the moment I set up my business, I want to set up a charity alongside my business. So one day when it starts to make money, there are things I need to do. There are things important to me that I need to do something about. I don't want to wait to have a lot of money to do it. I have to do it along the way. One of them was access to education, and the other is wildlife conservation, and the issue of war rights. The three things that are at the heart of the work we've been doing ever since that I set up the business, set up the charity at the exact same time. And today I've grown both simultaneously where they are now. So that's the summary of how I get into a healthcare business, out of the banks.
Okay. Well, once again, I mean, it seems like many of us don't have, that desire to really care for, people of color as a whole. I mean, you are one of the few that I've spoken to at your level. It seems, even here in the United States, I don't know why it seems like politics corrupts just the moral nature of man in general. I mean, it seems like once someone becomes a politician, their concern is for their wealth and the others who are wealthy. They totally forget about, everyday man, the everyday people. And the thing about it is that we want to act like this doesn't happen in America, but it does happen in America, but it can only happen to a certain extent because, as you state, we have certain checks and balances here, which are not present in Africa. But it does happen here. The same things happen here. And it's great to hear someone like yourself who has this desire to really, okay, I'm going to do something business-wise, but alongside of my business, I'm also going to have a charity so I can also work on those burning desires that I have for the environment, for wildlife, for, the average everyday person. I also have a charity, stand up and do something. And so that is part of our goal. Part of our goal is to do things internationally. dealing with home instability, energy instability, food instability. I have other nonprofits dealing with, natural resources and the planet, just as you have. So it's nice to have someone thinking in the same manner as I do. As someone with roots in Uganda, who has lived in South Africa and the United Kingdom and Canada, your multicultural background has given you a different perspective on things. And how do you or don't you see others in diaspora doing the things that we should be doing? I mean, where do you see the lack of response in most of us at, as far as our concerns to and for Africa?
Interesting question.
Do we do enough? Yes or no?
No, you don't do enough. No.
Okay.
And I think some of it is by design. I don't think it's a. I think for Black Americans, forget me saying that, for Black Americans, Black British, there's a design behind it. This is not to say anything negative.
Be open.
Yeah, look, I come to the US many times. I have many friends in the US.
Right.
But they're all white.
Correct.
Right? And it's not that I haven't tried to find Black friends to help. But we don't have enough to talk about in common. All desire, all approach, or outlook, or name it, to keep a friendship going.
Right.
Right? And I think it's by design. Because if you think about it, you've been conditioned to imagine Africa being this land of Zengi where everyone eats everyone. And you've actually believed it. Right? So you have this mental block. So quite simple. A Black American can catch a flight to go to Vietnam on holiday with 10 of their friends. You know, Vietnam is over Africa, right? You fly over Africa to go to Vietnam.
Correct.
But if you
fly
tell them
straight
that,
past it.
Yeah. If you tell them that, how come you didn't stop by Tanzania, Uganda, to see where they're like, oh, is it safe up there? And I'm like, okay. One, Vietnam has been to the same wars. One of them you guys fought there and even put phosphorus bombs in Vietnam. Africa never had any.
Right.
But you're comfortable, you and 40 of you, right? Getting all together and doing this backpacking trip across South Asia.
Right.
You can't do it across a few African countries because someone told you, basically, the moment you show up at the airport, you're going to die.
Right.
Now, on the flip side, this is actually true. I've seen it in my life, right? Where you want to fly to, say, Tanzania, and everyone else is white, right? Then you show up in Tanzania and say you want to catch it. You want 10 people are trying to drive from Tanzania to Cape Town, and you go along the path. Everyone you meet, either backpacking or driving, is white. There's no Black people doing it. So, the first answer is that it's not just anything about like, oh no, just the design, mentally. I think Black Americans and Black British, they have to get past the mental block. And actually to bring it the other way, even inter-Africa travel between even Africans like me, like, because I'm an African, but you African American or Black American. I'm African, like no other stuff. So you're going to find that Nigerians and Guineans would go to Nigeria, but if you tell them that let's go to Uganda and see what it is, they'll tell you to wait. They don't know anyone there, but they don't know how to go there. Even within the Africans themselves, who are in the diaspora, right? I've told my friends to come and see my work I'm doing in Cape Town. And the first thing they told me, you know what? There's xenophobia against Africans in South Africa. We can't go there. And I'm like, okay, here's my thing. Okay, South Africa is like 40% the size of the US, like 40-30%. So it's a big place.
Mm-hmm.
So they had trouble in like 10% of it, but it made the news world. Right? So every person of African descent from other African countries they've got that image on their wall that says South Africa, we can't go there because we're going to die the moment we come off the airport. But I come here all the time, and I've never died when I got off the airport. Right? So we've got the issue around just within us. There are things we need to overcome. Right? We give grace and compassion to other people that we don't give ourselves.
Correct.
Right? And I think that's wrong, right? Like, but just basically, there is that. Right? Then you get into the pieces that because this just actually I talk about this like with humility as well, because we've come late to the world table,
Right.
so we don't have a lot to work with.
Right.
So those of us who have something are afraid of losing it. Right? Whereas everyone else, they have an uncle to call if they have a problem. They have a grandmother who left them a house. So if they woke up and gave away $10,000 or took a year off to go find out about the country, in the grand scheme of things, their life won't change significantly.
Right.
But many of us, the first in line in our generation to be where we are. So everyone behind us is watching us stay there so they can follow.
Right.
So it becomes very difficult for someone who has all these expectations, all these mental blocks, to look beyond what they have, the minimum they can do for them to go ahead.
True.
Right? So then, for me, that's like in summary how I think why people don't know more, but I think they can do more, especially because this is not just about money. Most of it is about time.
Right.
Right. Everyone can find time. Right. For example, to help a charity do a small charity grant application for African kids going to school. Everyone can learn more about what's going on, like the Sudan. Everyone can do. You can learn more about something, and then within your network, do something about it.
That's why I was very excited about speaking with you, actually, is because of, me integrating with you and my nonprofit, working with your nonprofit and us teaming together, to bring more to Africa. Because see, just as you stated, a lot of this is mental conditioning. And what do I mean by mental conditioning? It starts from the world perspective. What do I mean by that? When you look at a globe or a map of the world, they'll have the United States so big, and they'll have the UK and European Union so big, and they will decrease the size of Africa. So if you would actually see in proportion the size of Africa to the United States and to Europe, in proportion, you would be shocked. You would be astonished.
Yeah.
So,
actually, you can feed in the US, feed all the Europeans, and whole chunk of the Chinese and Indians in Africa, land-wise. And
Exactly. But they don't display that. So the mental conditioning starts from the very making Africa look visually on maps much smaller than it is.
Exactly.
Now, the second stage of mental conditioning that we see and we actually experience is the fact that they keep the bulk of us people of color struggling. So we don't have the economic power to do or change things. Now the ones that they allow to break through, they only allow those to break through that they feel can embrace the dominant culture. So now, if you can't speak like us, if you don't want to go eat like us, if you don't want to conduct and carry yourself as we do, then you can't be part of this.
Yeah.
So they actually pick and choose the African Americans, Black Canadians, and even the Africans. They pick and choose those who they want and allow to succeed. And when you're chosen, you automatically know there's a line you must walk, or they will take everything away from you.
And none of us, and that what's he called? None of us is courageous enough to try to get there and then push the envelope, because you don't want to look, you don't know what it looks the other way after you've got there, because like as you say, as you start to move up, right? You see that your road narrowed up when you're the only guy standing. Then now it's almost closing behind you.
Correct.
So now you've got this problem of either you stay there and basically just toe the line, follow, don't shake the table.
Exactly.
But if you do, the road backwards, you don't know. You don't even remember how it looks like.
You don't know where you're going to end up, and what you're going to have to deal with, in that loss.
Yeah.
In that loss.
And so, none of it, you can't ask someone else. You can't ask someone to give it all up unless you've done it yourself before. Not many of us have.
Right. Now, I've never been to South Africa. I
will invite you. You'll be surprised.
Okay. But I have heard some things recently concerning high unemployment in South Africa. It's very and what do you think is the source of this high unemployment in South Africa?
Very good question.
And what do you think Africans in South Africa and we in Diaspora, what do you think we can do to help that situation?
I'm actually doing something about it. It was something I've been passionate about for a long time. Actually, this ties into the answer I gave you about why I do what I do. Okay? People talk about South Africa and try to paint it like any other country, and put the same expectations on it as they put on anyone else. And I think that's asking too much.
Okay.
Right? South Africa as a country, the way it looks now, is only about 30 years old from 94.
Yeah. Apartheid.
Yeah. So it's just like, I'll give you an example. Imagine, right? The Americans after the Civil War. Okay? They've gone through reconstruction. Now you're going to understand it. They've gone through reconstruction. And this is 1890 before Plessy.
Right.
Okay? Then Plessy happens. And they go backwards 100 years.
Mm.
People who look like you and I. Right? Then you get to 1960 and the Civil Rights Bill is defeated. Right? If it's defeated, here's what happens. You're not going to have Barack Obama. You won't have Condoleezza Rice. You won't have World Bankers. You won't have You're not having Robert F. Smith. You're not having none of those people.
Right.
Right? But if you go into like black business people, you're not having what's he called? The guy from the guy who wrote this good book. Why should white guys have all the fun? Robert F.
Okay, I don't
know. Right now,
is.
the guy in Maryland.
Yeah.
You know him? The guy in Maryland.
No, I've never heard of him before. I'll have to
He
read that
was
book.
the first black billionaire. He wrote a book called Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun. I've been to the museum too.
Okay.
You don't have none of those guys.
Okay.
Right? You're not having, Robert F. Smith from Vista Equity Partners. I've known him for a long time. But he's Africa's, like, he's America's richest black person. He has been for some time.
Mm-hmm.
But you go back to all these people, and that Civil Rights Bill that passed Congress got them into college.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Got them equal access to an education that prepared them for the banking world.
Correct.
That they now dominate. Now, South Africa go to 94. Okay? And they've got the election, they've got the black people in power, but they haven't done the economic justice of it. Right? You find that people who look like us still go to the worst schools in town.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you find that the university, which is free, potentially for you to get there, you have to first pass a thing called matric that only people can pay a lot of fees for their kids to be coached can pass. So in the end, you go to, it's a country that is mainly black, but you go to the unions and the banks, everyone who is there is white.
White, correct.
Yeah, because basically the road to the job and the uni go through a hole that isn't wide enough for all of us. Right? So in answer to your question, why is unemployment so much, is you have to turn and say, why is black unemployment so high? Not everyone is unemployed at the same time.
Right.
And the reason for that is simple. There's been unequal access to the tools of the trade, which is called education. Right? Basically, if you're black, you're poor. If you're poor, you're going to go to bad school. If you go to bad school, you're not passing matric. You're not passing matric, you're not getting the best uni. You don't want the best in your best school, you're not getting a job. It's that simple. So, the people in the diaspora cannot about that. It's simple. We need to find partners on the continent, partners in South Africa, who are doing something about ensuring black kids can widen their perspective, right? One, expectation to life. Two, access to education, especially how to pass matric.
Okay.
This is key. Like I saw this in Brazil too. They had the same thing. They're changing it now, but they had the same thing in Brazil. Right? They've got a university exam called vestibular where everyone sits the exact same test to go to a free uni. But the wealthy people can put their kids in the best schools to give them the best preparation to pass the matric, pass the exam there. And then they don't have to pay. They attend the best uni for free. So then you find that the country like Brazil, that not different from South Africa, has all their unis having the same white people who are of Portuguese descent and no black or native Brazilian people in the uni. Right? Because through time, the tools of the economy are sitting in Brazilians of Portuguese descent and some Spaniards and Germans. And they use those tools, right? Put their kids through the best kindergarten, the best high school, right? Then they pass the pre-university exam, get the best units, get the best job. It's very simple. You fix the high school, get enough black people in uni, you're going to fix your problem. That's number one. Number two, skills training. Like if we can't fix matric, right? We can get as many kids as possible into TVETs. They call them TVETs here, where kids can get training in STEM, plumbing, electrical, name it. Then South Africa needs many houses. They can build those houses while finding employment for themselves.
We call this trades. Yeah. Construction, plumbing, electrical.
I'm actually doing something out of that. I'm bringing a concept called Building Information Systems (BIM) to South Africa. It's digital technologies in construction, and we've set up. We recently curriculum. We got it approved here in the UK. And we've set up the first of its kind institute to do this program online for kids. So as many of them can use these kids fight their way out of poverty.
Okay. So see now what I'm seeing with apartheid, it was I don't even know the proper word to use it, because after speaking with you, they divested the land, but the actual professional infrastructure still remains white.
Yeah.
And so...
No, actually, they didn't divest the land. They still have the land. They just gave up the power, political power. They kept the land and the economy.
Oh, wow. So they didn't even divest the land. They just gave up the political power. So the whites still own 90% of the land.
And 90% of the money.
And 90% of the money and 90% of the professional infrastructure. See, when they teach apartheid, see, the biggest thing about apartheid was, the whites, which are minority in population, own 90% of the land. So we're thinking that land has been given back to the Africans.
No. Whoever told you that is lying. They haven't done none of the land.
Wow.
They haven't done none of the economy, making it economic justice, none of that.
Wow. So all they did was, okay, we won't run the politics, but we're maintaining everything that we stole from you.
Yeah, we're not even prepared to talk about giving it back for free or over time, or we're not prepared to pay any more taxes to do justice.
Wow. now this is something that I've seen at the root of the of education in many parts of Africa. You have a big disparity in schools, the level of education. I'm talking about young children. There's a big disparity. And the reason that is because you have better teachers better schools. Wait, hold on, wait.
Okay.
You have better teachers at some of the better schools, and then I've known teachers in Nigeria, Ghana, and Cameroon, and there's a big gap in some of their abilities. I mean, just in math or English. I mean, I know some of them that are great. That we hold conversations or we sit down and we're talking. Then there's others that I'm constantly correcting them on little things. It seems like there's no, how can I say it? There's no governing body where teachers have to have a particular level of education and tests to normalize the level of teachers saying, okay, all teachers have to fall into this area, and paying teachers adequately. I think that's also a problem. I find some teachers making this amount and other teachers making this amount. So I and I could be wrong. I'm just, giving my perspective. There isn't a normalization in the education as far as teachers go, where you're getting this thin band of quality teachers. I mean, the teachers, kind of span from very good all the way down to very bad. You can take over from there.
See, that it goes back to what I talked about for Inter Africa context, but for the rest of Africa, it's different. See, education in Africa is a business. There's no school boards, there's no nothing like that. So it's a private business. You have no money. Right. If you have no money, you can't go to school. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's bad. There is a bad, right? There is the drive to make basic literacy a human right. That everyone under 5 should read and write and all that stuff. Right? Mm-hmm. So because of that, the World Bank program called UPE, or Universal Primary Education, and this stuff. They've got it up in ESGs. But the bottom of the heart of this is simple, right? The education system for the wealthy and the politicians and the elite is different from everyone else.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
The reason is that in the private schools, the parents pay a lot more money, so those schools can have better teachers and staff.
Right.
The poorer schools, where most kids actually go to school because many people are poor, don't benefit from the highly trained teachers because they follow the best salary.
Right.
Right. So to bring it back to your thing about the gradient of teachers is that if say out of 100 teachers, okay, 80% of those who are educating 90% of the students in the country went to bad schools because they come from poor neighborhoods, poor parents, right? You're going to have 80% of your students being of average quality, because many of them are going to schools that basically the poorer schools where there's no laboratories, where the people have to walk 10 miles to get there, where the light goes off, right? Because the private person in that village, the school they can build is that for the people who are there, right? So then the quality of teachers is going to vary based on what school they teach at and what school they themselves attended.
Correct.
Because if they came from a poor family, they went to bad school. They went to bad school, became a bad teacher, like a bad, primary career teacher training college. Now they are teaching kids not what's in the curriculum, but what they want to teach them, because no one is even what's it called, when you have like school boards, they do standards. Right? They've got superintendents to go there and make sure everyone is doing the same. They do what they have to do. They do career. They do what's it called, a quality assessment for schools. No one is doing that in Africa, especially in the schools, the remote areas where no one cares. So what I mean?
I understand.
That explains the gradient in quality of teachers that you talk.
Now, let me ask you another question. Do you feel as if the school systems in Africa would transform from being private businesses into government and state-ran institutions? That would solve the problem.
I'm actually cognizant of the fact that governments are bad at doing things. And I wouldn't want to get an African government that can't build a road properly and give it a school to run. I wouldn't ask for that. That would be something that would be literally adding, basically washing and hanging on the sand to dry. So I wouldn't do that. But what I think is that I'm an atheist, but I would go to faith-based institutions to run schools, because throughout Africa the best schools are run by the churches. Right? Okay. And they've been here since before when education was free. Now they charge money for it.
Right.
But all over Africa, you find that the best schools are run by some missionaries or Catholics or Anglicans or Muslims, the best ones.
Right.
So I would sort of imagine a situation where like a school board run by one of these faith-based institutions building and managing schools, like something like that.
Okay. So faith-based institutions would be the best way to transform the educational system. Faith-ran institutions would be the best way to transform Africa. Interesting perspective, especially coming from someone who is atheist. That's amazing. Okay. Can you elaborate on how Diaspora Africans can create an impact beyond traditional remittances? And what alternative models of transformation are you seeing or advocating for?
Skills. Actually, Africa doesn't need your money. It needs your skills. Right? See, I'm a banker, right? And a tax consultant and a business person. Now, I can't tell you 10 things I've done to create many jobs all over the place. Right? Through my BAME program that we're doing in South Africa, right, I put together professors all over the world, plus one or two Africans, to come up with this project, this program, basically with this curriculum of breaking up this complex subject into small pieces for everyone to learn, so they can use those pieces to fight their way out of poverty. Now, we're getting this program approved in South Africa, and we've got it done in England. Now, the courses are going out, all the unis and all the TVETs to run. As we provide the courses, they sell the courses, we split the margin at the top. Right? Now, I'm not an engineer. Right? But I'm a businessman who has seen a problem and I've seen an opportunity. And I brought together a few Africans on the continent, a few Europeans, to put this whole thing together for it to go live now, where courses are available to people. Right? Now, in doing that, I brought a skill, which is problem solving, plus capital. Right? But if I didn't think about the problem, you can have all the money in the world. You have not solved the problem.
Correct.
Right? Then you say, okay, I want to solve this thing about youth unemployment, but I want to do it at scale. So I need to find a model that can potentially one day, once we all the tech side of it is set up, we are like 80% of the way there. We're going to have an ability to put out like 500,000 BAME graduates, right? Via this digital training program. Okay, so by doing that, by doing just pushing out all these graduates to go find work, you need all the fulfillment centers, right? Where you're going to create jobs. Right now, we have people in South Africa who work, about 10 of them are employed in this program. Right? But okay, I brought the capital. But the capital wasn't the thing. The thing was that you need this unique idea to rally people around, right? And then use that idea, turn it into a product that can then solve all these problems at scale, right? So now you go to our program in East Africa. We in wildlife conservation and access to education, and we actually run a few schools. We don't run the schools. We find the money, right? And do the budget needs of the school and say, look, in exchange for our support, we want X kids under these programs in your school. And we're looking for these benchmarks for the kids as they go through primary, high school education, right? Now, by doing that, the school now pays its teachers better. It retains the best teachers, even if it's the bad neighborhood, like it's in a village where there's no one, right? So then, so you find that they use the idea of the remittance, but you find that remittance is the way people, they send a brother or sister to build them a house. That's what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is ideas that solve problems, and then you find capital behind those ideas, right? So I think as Diaspora, the first thing is find one or two problems, define it properly. Like, what's the problem? Then find a solution for it. Then you say, okay, for this solution, what do I need in terms of people and in terms of money? You're going to find that actually what's the most challenging piece, finding good people to work with to get something done. Right? Now, when you find them, then you can turn around and find the capital to make it work. Right? But I think, I was to answer your question, besides remittances, skills that solve problems. That's what we need.
Okay. So, once again, if I could communicate this properly, you need people like myself and others in Diaspora with proper skill sets to bring that knowledge and that ability to Africa.
Yeah, and then look at the problem.
Look at the problems and problem solve it. Problem solve it. Because one of the things that I've seen also with Africa is temporal time perception. And what I mean by temporal time perception is they will plan something only thinking about the next 3, 6 months or a year instead of projecting something out 5, 10, 15 years. And see, so for me, if I'm going to do something tomorrow, that has to be good for me. That has to be a good decision for me 3 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now down the road. I can't make a decision that's just going to be good for me tomorrow.
Exactly.
And so that is a lot of the disparity I see, that the decisions that a lot of important people are making when they are trying to address these problems are very short term. And they don't go out long enough, the planning necessary to make sure you're conducting something in a manner that's productive in the long run just doesn't exist. Doesn't exist.
Exactly. This is one of them, but also to add to that, many of the challenges we face didn't happen today.
Correct.
They've been around for some time. We're just not paying attention to them the way we should, because everything else takes our time. And we need to stop doing that, because everyone else is actually thinking about what they're going to do to us over the next 10, 15 years.
So we need to start thinking about what they're trying to do to us and how we can stop it and prevent it.
Exactly.
And serve our own people.
Yeah. And I think people from the outside are better qualified for this across the Africans, because when they're inside facing problems, they don't look up and say, oh shit, the people are doing this.
Right. When you are stuck inside of a box, locked inside of a box, you don't know how to get out of that box. Someone outside of that box has to come and let you out of that box. I got you. I got you. This is very interesting. Tell us about NHCI and NEDO. How did these organizations emerge from your vision of creating meaningful professional and social impact?
Basically, as I said before at the start of the interview, when I was quitting banking, seeing what happened in 1908, I said I'll set up a company and I'll set up a charity with it so that I could figure out a way to use both of them to make meaningful impact, career-wise, personally, professionally, and personally. I was done doing things that don't motivate me as a person, first of all, but also that something where my conscience is in question every morning, I wasn't going to do it any fun.
Right.
So Nexim NCXI is my main operating business, Nexim Healthcare Consultants. It's a business I've grown from zero to about 45, 50 million turnover in Canada over the last 15 years.
Okay.
Right? Basically from zero, standing start to where we are now. We've got 3 offices, 1 FE awards, and basically we are leaders in our space in what we do.
Okay.
Now that business, when I set it up, I also set up a charity right at the start called Nexim International Development Organization. And I gave it 15% of my first shares so that as the business grew, we can do more with, through our charity.
Charity, okay.
So the charity is NEDO. So that NEDO is the vehicle through which I do the work I'm doing in South Africa now, that BEAM program I've told you about. It's an institute housed in NEDO, and how, because NEDO set up a trust in South Africa, that then set up a for-profit company set up to commercialize this IP, right? And the idea is that the net revenue from that project will go into our other programs on the continent. That's the concept. And along that concept, we have a healthcare college in Canada as well that is set up to do the exact same thing. Basically, make some money for for-profit players. But then the charity has a portion from every tuition paid by a student that goes into our social justice commitments. So that's how those two fit, and then how they get into how they come together to make basically to help me achieve the impact is that obviously through Nexim, we impact many people through job creation. Through Nexim, we also do internships for colored kids across our offices. We also do financial literacy, as a right, because I find that many kids are from my neighborhood where I grew up in Brixton. They didn't know anyone who could file a tax return. So part of the things we do in NEDO is financial literacy, especially in Canada, for mainly kids who look like us, to understand credit cards, bank loans, mortgages, name it. And then internationally, our focus is in getting our girls in school and keeping the African wilderness wild, right? By keeping animals there, not fighting people with land. Yeah. So that's how those two combine.
Okay. What challenges do you encounter in transitioning from a corporate career in investment banking to entrepreneurship in health and social care staffing?
I think that the first thing that I have to get around myself was the idea of no. Basically, you don't have a guaranteed paycheck.
Correct.
That you need to get out of your way quickly. But also, I think for me, what made for me an easier transition was this. I didn't have a lot to lose.
Okay.
Right. Many people imagine being without a big house, without a car, being without this, but I was never someone for any of these things.
Okay.
Even though I was in the bank having a big job, I didn't try to get a house I didn't want.
Okay.
Right. So when it came to changing my life from the corporate guy to a guy starting a business, like I quickly said, here are things I don't need. I'm going to put them on the market quickly, put them in the bank. Then I bought a building in a North neighborhood for the lowest. I got the best deal in town in a building downtown Toronto. I paid 20,000 for it, and I spent about 80 grand turning it into an office.
Okay.
Right. Then I knew that I could live in the same place, I have no rent to pay. Right, where my office is.
Correct.
And then I couldn't fail to feed myself. Then I could fund my dream based on my savings without having to worry about any distractions.
Correct.
Right. So in answer to your question, I would say the for me, I say the biggest challenge is for me, because they except my dad who had died like 25 years earlier, actually 30 years earlier, there was no one in my circle who was a business person I could speak.
Mhm.
So, and I was in a new country where I didn't know anyone. So I had to go find these people, right? Either through books, or through YouTube videos, or through research, and find out how they did what they did and teach myself these skills. Like, I'm an accountant. I wasn't a businessman. I didn't know how to, for example, make a cold call. I teach myself that, right? I didn't know about the idea that maybe I had these skills. I just hadn't read about them in how those skills make a business person. Like things like
Correct.
self-discipline, right? Like you've got to make 1 million calls to get one customer. These are things that they don't teach in accounting,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then things like what's it called? How to balance your cash book. You learn when you're balancing someone else's. Now you need to balance yours to make sure you can make payroll, and pay the mortgage and pay the tax bill, right? While keeping an eye on what's it called, the money coming in and going out. So I had to teach myself the skill, what it takes to succeed as a business person. Like I've learned those skills one by one because I didn't have no one around me to tell me don't do this or that, right? So for me, if I can say the challenges I faced, those basically the early transition, what's it called, fears of do I make a fool of myself doing this, and how do I stop that, right? Like basic things, what's it called, don't buy stuff you don't need when you get your first what's it called, payment. Don't because the customer paid 20 grand. Don't wake up and buy a car for 18, right? Because most of that money is not yours. Accounting for just don't know, right? So that discipline, that everything has to be in a certain place, right? For your vision to manifest itself. You have to be patient, you have to be disciplined, right? And you have to be persistent. That these things I've taken myself when I got out of the bank.
Okay. And I believe what you're stating is so important. You went to that, you made that affirmation that you didn't have a lot to lose, and a lot of people haven't. How can I say it? Came to that concept of understanding the difference between being a physical slave and an economic slave. When you're an economic slave, you buy into the system, you're making money. You think you have to have the biggest house, the biggest car, all of this stuff that you have to have now because you think you're successful. And most of it, you really didn't buy. It's on credit. It's on credit. It's on credit. So now you have became an economic slave to the system because you have so many things now that if you pivot and you're not getting that guaranteed paycheck, a lot of what you have will go away and you'll ruin your credit and you will never be able to get those things back again because you got those things based upon credit and not really based upon money. And so that is one of the things that we need to instill in our people, that even once you start making money, don't become an economic slave. No. Don't get your...
I'm going to add something there. Basically, there's the economic slave, but I'll add one point to that. Right? Like in Canada, they call it T4. In the US, is what when you get that in tax that shows how much money you made.
Right. Yeah. Right? Okay. Well, yeah. You get your W-2, your withholding. Yeah.
That's something that says you made $1 million. Yes, right. Because when you have that, you can use that to go get all the credit you need. Everyone knows, you can qualify for this and that and that and that. Then you become a slave to it because you can't. When you try to give it away, everything that it got for you is gone, and it's unimaginable when that happens.
Very true. Very true. Very true. So this is something that is very necessary. That's some necessary teaching that we really don't. We really need to get out there. This whole concept of becoming an economic slave. We need to get away from that. Your charity, NEDO, operates in 4 East and South African countries. First, what does NEDO stand for? And what motivated you to focus on these specific regions? And I want you to tell me those countries and regions. But first, tell me what does NEDO stand for?
Next, International Development Organization.
Okay.
That's the charity that I set up. And my business is Nexim Healthcare Consultancy. So it's just a variation of the first name. Okay. One doing for-profit, one doing charity.
Okay.
Now, we are in the East Africa, we're in Uganda, we're in Tanzania, we're in Rwanda, the Rwanda-Congo border, we're there, and we're in South Africa.
Okay.
And in East Africa, we're in access to education, as I said, and wildlife conservation. We have programs that save the apes and save tree climbing lions. And we are in the early stages of doing access to water in Tanzania among the Maasai. And in South Africa, we're doing the BEAM, STEM-based training for kids so they can use these BEAM skills to fight their way out of the town.
Okay. How do you define impact in your professional and philanthropic work? What metrics or indicators do you use to measure meaningful change?
Good question. A few of these, there are things I say that we're doing for our kids. They, for example, like our BEAM program, when successful, the indicators are going to be how many of the Black, South African, and colored kids are applying BEAM in day-to-day projects to solve South Africa's infrastructure needs, but also getting employment, so they no longer have to work in bars and restaurants. Now, until we start to see those get enrolled, and we start to see them get out of, most of them are 6 months programs, get them into, get the kids graduate, get into applying these skills. I'm not yet here to define the success in a program. Right? But in the other programs, for example, in East Africa and Canada, like in East Africa, the programs are because basically they're solving mundane day-to-day problems of people fighting over land and animals, and women, girls going to school. So there the measurements are simple. It is how many girls are graduating high school, how many are graduating primary school, how many are going to university, right? So we just measure within our program every 4 years how many kids came with us at the start. They've completed, they're going to A-level, they've gone to university or college, and they having meaningful careers of their own after our program.
Okay.
Right? That's for the East Africa program. On the Canadian program, on the Canadian side, mainly it's how many, especially our financial literacy program, and the articling program is how many of these young people are getting jobs at higher levels, starting at higher salaries and levels than they would have started if they didn't come from our program.
Great.
So keep these statistics for us to measure ourselves versus our goals within our social justice framework.
Great. Now, Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania, and South Africa. What made you specifically choose those regions? And most of them seem to be in East Africa, and with the addition of South Africa.
Uganda, I was born there, so I always thought that one day when I make some money, I'll do something there because
that's your home.
The place, it didn't do a lot for me, but they still my origins. There's something. Right. Also, my mom retired there, and she said, "Everyone says there's a problem here, and no one wants to do something about it. So, if you're gonna ask people to do something about something, do something about it yourself first." So she's there. So everything I'm doing there is because she went there first. Right. Then in Tanzania is because I'm a wildlife cameraman, and if everyone tells you the best safari picture you can take is on the savannah among the Maasai with the wildlife migration.
Oh yeah.
If you've taken that picture, you know it. I've taken it many times. Every time I take it, it's different. So I go to Tanzania many times. That's why I'm doing some work there, because I believe that we should do what we can to make sure that the Serengeti remains what it is for our kids when they come of age and their kids. I like the Congo Rwanda because of the great apes. There's few of them left. and they're in one ecosystem between three countries.
Mm-hmm.
Right? An American woman died there saving them in 1980. Diana Fossey, you can go find about her. Find out about her. Diana Fossey, the movie about her is on YouTube. You can actually rent it too. But the idea is that our closest cousins, they're 99% human. There's 800 of them left.
Right.
So we have to do something about making sure that those 800 don't die off before our kids get there. So I'm doing something about that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
and tell everyone specifically what these 80 of our closest cousins are.
They are mountain gorillas.
Gorillas. Mountain gorillas. Yes, mountain gorillas.
800 of them. They live in an ecosystem between Rwanda, Uganda, and the Congo. That area is called Ngahinga, and then the Rwandese side is called, on the Congolese side, it's called the Virungas. In Uganda, it's called Ngahinga. In Rwanda, it's called, I forget, Volcano or something. Anyway, it's a unique ecosystem up a mountain where they live.
You're right, yeah.
And there's 800 of them left in a while.
800, not 80. 800.
800.
No, 800. Let's give a correction for that to the audience. Yeah. Okay. For young African professionals in Diaspora, how can they contribute substantially to their home countries, and what advice would you give them in doing that?
Skills, as I said before.
Skills.
Yeah, pick up your skills.
Problem solving. Then
try to go and solve the problem, and try to solve it at scale.
Okay. At scale. At scale.
Yeah, you need to solve the problem at scale. Basically, for example, you could say, like, I'll give you an example. People who don't have access to water is a big problem. But most of Africa has a lot of rain. It's just uneven. If you could make the water, if you could make rain happen evenly, then you can solve starvation.
Yes. Or once again, they know when the rainy seasons are coming. You know when, and some rainy seasons are better than others. But see, once again, this comes to infrastructure. You have this rainy season, and you have all of this water just flooding
the whole place,
millions of miles of land, instead of building some type of infrastructure to capture some of that water and store it underground, and and use storage containers, and then pump it back out. Because basically what happens to a lot of that water, which is rain, it just evaporates over time as you transition from wet season to dry season.
Yeah, exactly.
It just evaporates. So why not capture 30% of that water and store it? Build some type of infrastructure.
Yeah.
And see, when you say to scale, many times I've worked, I was a research scientist. And, once again, you have to work out the problems on the basic level, which is small scale, then extend it. So it's actually twofold. You have to come up with a solution, but then you have to learn how to scale that up.
Yeah.
And so I'm just putting this out there for young people, young professionals. If you want to do something, you have to figure out a solution, but that's just not the end stage. You have to come up with the concept. Okay, now this is how we can solve this, but how can we scale this up from impacting maybe 1,000 people to 1 million people?
Exactly.
Okay. How do you see the role of Diaspora networks evolving and addressing complex and social and economic challenges in Africa.
Accountability. Quick accountability. Basically, Diaspora networks for social groups like fraternity organizations, if you call them that. The key role they can play is saying, look, a few of you set out last year to do X thing in Tanzania or in this country or that country. Can you tell us what happened there? What lessons can you get from that? How can we take this to other countries? Right? One, hold people accountable. Two, share the knowledge that everyone gets on the project. Three, transfer that to other places where they haven't gone. You can basically create a blueprint to give to someone else to go to the same thing in another country.
But do you know why we don't have any accountability?
I think partially it's because we haven't made an effort of connecting one to the other one.
Right. It's communication.
Yeah. Like you see that. I'll give you like a quick example. Jewish fraternity organizations around the world know each other, talk to each other all the time.
Right.
So if there's a problem to do with Israel, all of them say the same thing.
Right. Communication.
But you can't find one or two organizations that speak to African issues in unison as other organizations do. So the Arabs have a thing. The Indians are building one too. The Chinese have one already, even if they don't speak English.
So that's what we need to establish. We need to establish a communication network. Once we establish a communication network, and via that communication network, we are understanding all of the collateral problems happening in the various different areas, then we can start holding ourselves and others accountable.
Yeah.
For that. So the communication component of that comes first. And that
I would say I think not just communication, but rules of civil practice, if I could put it like
that's
that.
important. That's important also. That's important also.
Right? Because if we said, hey, we have 20 organizations covering all of Africa, from South Africa and Yemen. All of us are getting together to write this constitution. That every year, all programs going on, every year, all of us have to report them here on this date. And when you do that, here's what should be in the report. Who are the people you're dealing with? What challenges have you faced? Right? How have you overcome them? And what's the impact of your program? Right? And that if you turn around and say you're going to do something and you don't do it, or if, for example, you fundraised for something, but then didn't deliver on the outcomes of the fundraising, here's how I'm going to hold you accountable. So then now you've got this little civil procedure that all of us govern each other back.
That's fine. We're almost done.
We're almost done. You've been patient. But you need 5 minutes.
We're almost done.
So anyway, so I'm saying that. So then we can hold each other accountable based on having like some form of semi-constitution with some rules of civil procedure, so, and some avenues to basically have the equivalent of like a convention or something, where everyone comes together, they talk about what we've done and then what we're going to do next year and how we're going to do it and the lessons and all that stuff. That's what I think.
Whoa, what happened here? Oh,
Good
my
question.
Yeah, my camera dropped. So we're just going to continue this without my camera. My camera, because I only have a few more questions. My battery was supposed to go for an hour and a half, or 2 hours, and it cut off on me an hour and 30 minutes. So we're just about done here, though.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Your work seems to bridge multiple sectors: healthcare, social development, and business. How do you multitask and jump between all three of these areas?
2 things. Being disciplined with my time.
Okay.
And then, of course, I've got strong leadership teams across the places, but I think being disciplined with my time and also sectioning of each of the things I do in different boxes.
Okay.
and then allocating time to each of those boxes in a week based on urgency.
Alrighty. Okay. Can you share
Also,
specifics?
also, if I could add something here, I've learned to say no to things that it's exactly a learned skill now that I've figured it out. I've learned to say no to requests for help that I believe interfere with any of those if I can't find free time in any of those boxes for whatever request for help I'm getting.
Okay. Can you share a specific story or project that exemplifies the kind of transformative work you believe Diaspora Africans can undertake?
I think my BIM project is one of them. I think it's been 4 years I've been doing this, and I've only sold one course, so I don't think I'm qualified yet to put it in that space. But I think for the sort of potential impacts it's going to have, and the sort of systemic change it's going to create, I believe when it does, and we'll come back to talk about it. That will be the best answer I can give. Basically, here's what this is. Once we get to mass market to these programs, here's the impact. Here's what the impact is going to be, right? A whole chunk. Basically, just to give you the background, Africa spends $1 billion on BIM experts for different large AEC projects on the continent every year. Okay. Because there's no university or college that has this program within the training that they do. I want to make sure we don't do that going forward by training as many people in this space as possible.
Okay.
Right. So in summary, my what I think maybe the what's it called, a picture of what can happen. Right, when someone from the diaspora finds a problem, finds a solution, and stays disciplined along the way through the development and execution stage, then to bring a concept onto market to mass solve a problem like this. That is the sort of the perfect example of something I'll put out there.
Okay, now we go into this area of the show I call flip mode, where you get to ask me 3 questions, and then we'll be ending the show. So you have think about 3 questions you want to ask me.
Okay. I think I have them.
Okay, go ahead. First question.
What made you interested in talking to me?
Well, once again, I'm interested in talking to individuals in various different countries who are inspired to come together and to create change. So, when I was presenting your story and I actually looked at everything you were doing, a lot of the things you're doing are the same things I'm trying to do, except you're more advanced into it. And so personally, I found you to be a potential key resource for me and doing some of the same things that you're doing. You're further down the road than I am. And that's one thing that we don't get into enough in our community is mentoring. So instead of me bumping my head trying to figure out how do you do this, how do you do that, you're a resource now for me to communicate to and talk to, and I can answer, well, how exactly did you do that? Because I am trying to do that.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. That's a good one. Second, this actually is the second one is going to be a portion of the American side of you, and then your kids.
Mm-hmm.
You have a child with a Nigerian girl and one with a Congolese, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. That means that you're not born in Africa, but your kids are part African.
Correct.
So my question for you is this: what are you doing to make your kids understand the difference being an African American, being an African African?
The difference I try to teach them is to take the better parts of both cultures. So they have to stand in between and see, okay, my mom what are the best parts of my mom and what are the best parts of my father, and try to combine the two, so that the the combination of the two is greater than the sum of the whole. And so I want them to to be better and have more impact than I possibly could, because there are just some things like my son spent my Nigerian son spent 16 years in Nigeria before I found him and brought him here to the United States. And he was kidnapped twice after I found him, and they moved him. But I was able to get him here. So and this, my 18-year-old Dante. So the two of them have the ability to take the best of both worlds and create and come up with something totally unique and totally different.
Oh, interesting. Mm. So my third and final question is, so you've been to Africa a few times.
No, I've never been to Africa.
Oh shit! Now we need to get you there. But let's say you can move time forward, say 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
What would you want the Africa of your grandkids to see? And what can we do to make it happen?
I want to see African nations having the social systems that we have here in America, Canada, and Sweden, providing free health care, having social welfare programs for the individuals who are in need and who have particular problems that they can't work or they can't find work in regions, or disaster supports. Basically, much of Africa lies on a system whereas if you don't work, you can't eat. And
No.
many people can't work or can't find work. So you have millions of people starving, no fault of their own. So I want to see an Africa that has social systems in place and has less of a disparity between the rich and the poor.
Fair enough. Well, that's the Africa I was trying to create. Hopefully, someday when we meet in the afterlife, it has happened under our eyes.
Well, I think me and you working together, we can start maybe putting some of these things in place. I think we have generally the same ideology, and we want the same things, and that's why it was so important for me to speak to you. I'm sorry, my camera went off on the last portion, but see, you are the most important part of this, and so you had me up until the last 15 minutes. So looking forward, what systemic changes do you hope to see in our diaspora communities and have them engage with and support development in countries of their origins?
I think, as I said before, mentally, I go back to the brain. I know we don't have much, but we can start with what we have to do something different with it. Then have the money, skills,
Right.
and problem solving. I think if we can best get over the barrier of I'm incapable of doing these two, I don't have to move the whole house. I just put one brick down. I think then we'll be fine.
Okay. Well, you know what? It was great having you on this show. I can tell you I'm going to bring you back many times in the future. I think you have a lot to share, and we're going to dissect some of this. Your show will probably go on, I would think, 2 weeks from now, because we've just been focusing on our Apple podcast, but we're going to be pivoting to YouTube. And so I want to also bring my YouTube subscribership up, because I want your show. I want your show to reach out to the masses. And we're going to bring you back from time to time to talk about the various different programs and how we in Diaspora can help you and assist you on these programs. Well, everybody, thank you, Henry, for coming on the show, and we're going to welcome you back. That's today's show. I thank everyone for attending the All About Us podcast. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.